Baba Casito, you are the Belgium, and the Casito. The name was on the Medjadany, Sumchi Gidor, the Riga part Thomas Yamni. Ani di Tanga, Medjadany status Gani, Trapaya, Dinomolia, Ani, Donsinyanti, Yangi, the Trapaya, or those language. They told a number of Danny Sugoya, you are Thomas Saint Union, Lasa Union. The name was on the Natus Tobacco, Tozu, Devacini, Tojani, Casayona, Tojarono, di Parala.
Thomas del Samuel Tashley, and Sumju to Dinky and Pushun Hanzoki Sungi Dingaman Lotion. Sumju to take up to Nangape, Peggy Shunil Hanzoki, and Cap Sumti. They didn't chill on you, don't you? That was Sumju to Dinky, Nimudir. Peggy Rawanta, Ranzingi Chetu, Rangu Messe Nankinki, Sube, Semi Shive Talam, Damintone, Yamarki, Tapu, Zenzula, Mogonangi, Geje Pau Bamuyonga, Peggy Shunil Hanzoki, Lana Mepe Kuzitan, Jetain Shujutan.
Dear Excellencies, unfortunately, the President of the Tibet Intergroup of the European Parliament, the German MEP Thomas Mann, cannot join us today as he has to take part in the session of the European Parliament in Strasbourg. But Mr. Mann declares the following. The European Parliament urges the Chinese government to release all people imprisoned. Many of them are still in the hands of the Chinese security authorities and their fate is uncertain. The big majority in the European Parliament supports His Holiness in his middle way approach and the right of the Tibetan people for cultural and religious autonomy. On the occasion of the last visit of His Holiness to Brussels, we welcomed the Dalai Lama in the European Parliament. As a sign of solidarity with the Tibetan people, we launched a fasting event and more than 520 members of the European Parliament took part. As President of the Tibet Intergroup, I can assure you that we have always been a committed supporter of dialogue, peace and friendship. On the occasion of our regular Tibet Intergroup meetings, we invite experts from all over the world to inform about the situation of prisoners, monks and nuns, as well as refugees. Because of our initiatives and political actions, our voice is important. The re-establishment of the Tibet Intergroup for 2014 is our big aim. It is absolutely clear that the Tibetans do not demand separation. A real autonomy is an incredibly important factor for the future to protect and preserve your language, religion and tradition. The establishment of the Tibet Intergroup 24 years ago, coincident with the imposition of the embargo against the People's Republic of China. Its maintenance to the present day is one of the biggest success of our parliamentary work in the European Parliament. It has to be retained since there is no progress on the situation of human rights in China. I congratulate for this strong demonstration here in Brussels. At the same time, 600 kilometers away in Strasbourg, we always prove our solidarity with you and the cause of the Tibetan people in the European Parliament. Let's stay together, let's work together, let's protest together for humanity. Tashi Delek.
Good morning, Tashi Delek. I'm glad to address so many of you on this National Day, on this historic day when we're celebrating the 55th anniversary of the National Tibetan Uprising Day. We think that the international community has a crucial role to play in ensuring that these worrying developments in Tibet don't go unnoticed. We at the International Campaign for Tibet in Brussels are dedicated to keeping the Tibetan issue on the European agenda. Whatever agreements may be negotiated with China, the human rights situation in Tibet should not be ignored by the EU institutions, especially by the European External Action Service. And today we are here to remind them that Tibet cannot be forgotten. Today there are meetings all over the world commemorating the uprising of 1959, which is a clear sign that people around the world care about the rights and freedoms of the Tibetan people. And as many of you know, ICT Brussels Director Vincent Meten is today in Dharamsala, participating in the 10th March celebrations with a delegation of the European Economic Social Committee. It's the first time that the president of an EU institution is on an official visit to Dharamsala, and tomorrow he will meet with the Dalai Lama. So we hope that this will create a precedent and that many other EU leaders will follow his example and will meet with the Dalai Lama, for example, during the Dalai Lama's upcoming visits to many EU member states. The European Union is founded on the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, rule of law, respect for human rights, including the rights of minorities. These values must also take a prominent place in the external affairs of the European Union. On the 31st of March, the Chinese President Xi Jinping will come on its first official visit to Brussels. We ask EU leaders to raise the human rights situation in Tibet during their meetings with President Xi. We've been insisting on many occasions, and we will continue to insist, that discussions on human rights between the European Union and China should not be confined only to the human rights dialogue, but should also take place in high-level meetings. To do otherwise, for a recent recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize like the EU, would not only be a mistake, but also an abdication of the values on which we have built our free societies. And we believe that these values cannot be sidelined in the face of economic interests and trade relations. As you know, the Spanish Parliament recently voted on a bill limiting universal jurisdiction law after arrest warrants had been issued for 5 former Chinese leaders for genocide in Tibet. What we are witnessing in this case is that now an authoritarian state such as China has the power to pressure and obtain changes to the national legislation of a major European democracy. We therefore urge the EU to remain firm and live up to its principles and values, and to raise the issues of counterproductive and dangerous militarization of Tibet, the crackdown and criminalization measures on self-immolations, and the need to restart the Sino-Tibetan dialogue.
Dela tangi tanda jami nganju phaba to jami ge ani tanda Paris ni ko fair re de ne tanda nganju de baroni da modern la ya ma de chin de tu ga ta ta la le ma tu ne ani dangongi kaptu la du sta de korangi sonje de ma phe la jurni tanda ngi ma nam la chi lo ai ani ke jin nang la no tu do de ne gonga me ba shu shui 자치 자신 저 별을 뺀다 남바 조보 남바 nga Paris ni lei ni gari 조보 참디 큰이 lei 대링니 별 랑왕 탑저 진의 롱압 중에 나와 임바당 완전 gen크는 의원이 치 세다당 배지 랑왕체 랑루 메사당위 야체 바오당 바모제 체도 년디니 공주제도 양행 수주인 단도 전강的류에 배기 첩수 정바당 류대당 선배 첩수 전설주 내당라 semgur 전부 제기 지로 이동 적선당 배기 저전당 미망 단동 럽주 망보당 지조 저기 미나 망보지 마치 시외 점거당 전배mel람 단동 세제 오고서 남바담인기고네 시숑라 베미초 랑와 랑시 랑경기 시치 도당급에 렌든 정발라 딜 막메 장론당 동대 참여진인 탈정강의 주변 미장대 숨겨든지 돈주인 카시 진의 로르당 리트기 미게 자동 참여진인 다른 리동스체 단도 시숑기 베미 계지 경알라 니민 자민당의 청계기관의 튼타제 막미 동대당 막수시회 최대 거의 송교바당 시회 총걸 진행 단동 8개 송교 진행장요 대외 로직링라 변난도 변미 시제 현동 미당 니생아 야나 시중계 잡배 시주라 오고체네 랑르 메세당 리토 미니스터신 디동스 쳔바당 군조와모 사다 도마챵라 속심제 리콜라 공스탈레라마 촌에 툭삽 쳔보랑기요 대외 로직링라 회기 첩수 좀반 가시 로드 땅 연랑 공수 야나 시중계 팀간의 자동 체매 제배 긴게 准康里去准个卡马尔卷学话当港乐下人是叫话米龙吧。水波党、吕波、汤波没把枪的，专看的乐讲，民抗的有人的绿的那当差的，他呢民抗的面具切开样，师兄给样人大东个，俺最简单师兄给，空个米酒人的位，对住给吃酒人，他觉得我个吃不当，俺最简单三个把白囊的白呢，白给我也那当的，吃落了吃不着吃的，人不学个。他们现在顺便啦，阿美利干的，公司大力拉马桥呢，加入这段激动国家的短训呢，程序方面让往这里去给媒介送不到，让那师兄给这点能的社会可以不得，让用中，让用可以说了，让用给头当当，除了让往个机械给有，营养那段的三年开个三路可是都会，程序吧，我提出让人去送。激动国家就是叫住了，我让你呢，北京的公司大力拉马桥呢，地大上扩充，空气上的，北京马米党，今天加拿师兄给空档，北迷茫了，佢把的让市让用党可以送脚，日上军政基因。年扩大存量稍微进来种，抗疫生呢，加拿兄弟可对营养北米让真最个要把当，加拿你看着这个要把日子写给读。共产党的送的，按照阿妈这个可能用我当，阿妹所用我的长龙说下大营，演讲阿妹这栋我给出个得做，南面基本当阿妹这栋当看到的可以呢，长龙说出个得做，南面三空是头发当，直接的看的，对你针对的北面交通员。共产党的拉嘛，加那个共产党的拉面加那个深圳沙瓦。国家习近平的国税人送给国际特区党，谈到空气听交接比加拿大小厂中推着汤什么，企业社到推的，心理数据沙瓦党，进入当今能力的就是了亚洲人。按照国家习近平的作为，加拿大思想了，别那个中央民头党也接党，别那个zadan的党的头，土南党就是因为热外这个，抗议生呢，水果兰地等个民国统治dun就那里水讲，米的盘成了，定个为开始中央民用了，第几天呢，按出来让新界开发用个，多少呢？
马上给教育搞得了，我就充满的入间。我从门就对处没当去当菜就过了，他妈呀入钱呢，教学员郎呢给教出来，他妈听了说法，那吃同样了说法，养着忙着，等你早年呢马街肉了，你当当的说法他妈给抽学去，等你马街肉了呢，然后学，娘的，对处他妈当菜娘入钱肉了，等你然后去学。
原来他这个东西过了，你都去学，等你都。안에 당 가랑 나 전도 제 정보식 토라야 소소 라니 기지 산세데 마도 산세지 나 전도 뭐 기프트나데 용토나데 가랑 데시 잡데데 롬보친게 희연당 초된 고유 냥타 안에 주소세지 답조 단생 나 토네 안에 롬보친 나 전도 안에 샬레나 등한데리